focusing on the customer advocate voice. We'll send out the details as we get closer to them. So a couple of housekeeping items. All of the attendees, your mics will be muted during the discussion. Please enter them into the chat box and we will answer them at the end of the session. They're also at the top right-hand corner of your screen. You can change the way you see the speaker, whether you want to have it as grid mode or the active speaker. So just to give you that information. The last thing, the webinar will be recorded and a link will be of the recording will be sent out to all the attendees after the webinar is over. So now let me introduce you to our moderator and co-founder, Kumar. So Kumar, take it away.
Thanks, Christina. I hope everybody can hear me. In particular, Ubindra, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. We were having some technical difficulties there. Fortunately, that has all been solved. So the idea of these set of webinars came with when I was talking with Jason as well as Jason from Z Prime and Christina. The idea here is that given what we are going through in terms of dramatic changes in technology and user experience, etc., what is it that we can do in order to prepare ourselves for the future? For one thing, I am one of those people who believes that even though things happen and dramatic things happen and dramatic changes happen, they're more a question of accelerating a longer term trend, whether it be for the better or worse. And this particular lockdown and things like that have certainly challenged our ability to function as a functioning economy. And so in particular, we wanted to examine what this has done to the energy industry. And rather than trying to double guess, we figured we'll just get some of the best minds in the country, put them around a table, in this particular case, a virtual table, and go ahead and do that. And so I'm merely the moderator. You're not here to listen to me. You're here to listen to our experts on the subject. So first of all, I want to start off with a question, which is, I would like all of our panelists to introduce yourself one after another, and I want take a minute or two to tell us how our current experience is going to change the energy industry, essentially in some significant ways forever. So let's Kevin, you want to go off first?
I sure can, Kumar. So hello everybody. Thanks to Kumar and Christina and everyone for putting the panel. Virtual panel together today. I think this is important for the industry to keep things rolling, keep people engaged. So, thanks again, and thanks for having me on the panel. So, Kevin Boudreaux from MP2 Energy. I manage all of the emerging technologies for MP2 Energy, and that really focuses around three areas, which are renewables, energy storage, and electric vehicles, both in front of and behind the meter. Been with MP2 Energy for 4 years, but I've been in the industry for over 20, both on the retail and wholesale side of the market. So really understand the risk parameters around all the pieces and how to structure these emerging technologies into retail supply agreements, bring customers value, and create synergies just across the board for all parties involved. The changing of the industry, there's so many pieces to it. I think fundamentally it's, what's hitting at home, and that's our work environment and our employees, right? I mean, a lot of people are still working from home. A lot of companies and individuals aren't even planning to go back before year end. So remote working is huge. I think that impacts the industry from a lot of standpoints, just the residential load that has increased and will be increasing, and how that affects going into the summertime is a huge component, especially here in Texas, where we have a lot of the AC load that impacts demand significantly. But overall, just in industry, you're going to see fundamentally the dynamics of usage parameters change and the energy types that customers want to use. And as we get into it, I'm sure I'll be talking a little bit more about all that. So thanks again for having me, Kumar.
Thanks. Bill, you want to go next?
Bill, listen. Can you hear me?
Bill? Yes,
Okay, can you hear me okay, Kumar?
we can hear you.
Okay. I'm Bill Kinneary. I'm president of the National Energy Marketers Association. I started my energy career in the Brooklyn Union T-Span organization, where I served a total of 10 years as general manager of both gas operations and rates and regulation, among many other utility work experiences. Since 1998, I served as president or CEO of 4 different retail energy supply companies. So I've been in the trenches. The COVID-19 pandemic will certainly harm our industry in terms of reduced revenues and increased bad debt, especially in our non-residential markets. I feel that the industry will survive this fairly well, perhaps with some business losses and consolidations. It's hard to say. However, recovery is highly dependent on our nation's ability to get people back to work. Unfortunately, this has become a very hot political issue. With so many unknowns, I feel my time today is best spent by looking beyond the current national crisis. My view of the retail energy supply industry has never changed. I mean, in the 23 years I've been involved, it's been the same. We need a serious adjustment in the focus of regulators for our industry to survive and thrive into the future. Utilities, as natural monopolies, have no reason and should have no right to be involved in fully competitive business functions. Retail energy suppliers can and should be the stakeholders of the future for all competitive retail energy functions. That's it.
Thanks, Bill. Laura?
Hey, Kumar. Thanks for getting everybody together too, by the way. I do appreciate it. And there's a few things about the industry that I think experience will change. One is this whole COVID-19 thing. Everybody is embracing technology more than they had before. We now understand we can work from home. It can be very effective. I think it's been a really interesting time. But that wasn't really the focus of what I wanted to talk about. On this panel, I'm pretty much the newbie. I've got maybe 15 years experience in the industry. So I've got a lot of experience, but not as much as these folks on the panel. I purposely, in my career, track an understanding of participants and services that affect the supply and consumption of energy. My hope is through understanding these relationships, I'll be able to create a better experience for all participants, balancing suppliers of commodity and services need to make money, which is why companies exist, and the consumers need to achieve the lowest possible cost. That way, everybody wins. And my journey to understanding this entire market and everything going on in it started with an energy consulting firm, managing electricity contracts. I worked for them for quite some time, understanding procurement, how contractual risk affects the actual cost of that procurement process, but how the technologies and incentives around you and how you consume energy can ultimately affect the price. So that was my kind of whetted my appetite for what I went on to do. I worked directly for a retail electricity provider. I wanted to understand the risk that they wear and how they calculate everything that goes into the pricing and what they're offering consumers. It's extensive. And over the past 6 years has been the absolute hands down most fun. I'm working with the emerging technologies and platforms that make the entire energy industry more efficient. For example, how you can install a device or use assets already in place that will help reduce consumption based on specific events like demand response or peak load management. How you can reduce the overall consumption by understanding how it is being consumed, how you can improve that process. And finally, how you can calculate and build these seemingly disparate systems and processes. There's so many different ecosystems going on. There's always something to learn, always something new. I find this entire industry fascinating. Really glad to be a part of it. Thanks for including me.
Thanks, Laura. Upendra?
Thank you, Kumar and Christina, for having me today. And I'm not a baby, I'm an old guy. I drifted myself into the energy space. But I think, we are in exciting times in that, we are going through this pandemic, which is a very sad and a very negative blip. It's going. I hope it doesn't continue too long because we're going through some hardship. Families are getting through very difficult times. But in terms of the energy, I see that there are going to be tremendous changes and tremendous opportunities for every one of us. I think that's what I see. New Jersey market, if you look at it, since the deregulation of 1999 IDECA Act, we have come a long way. And New Jersey develops energy master plan every 7 years as required by law. And under Governor Murphy, he has really taken it up and released a new energy master plan January 27th of this year, and which is going to transform the electricity marketplace. Why I say that is there's a tremendous focus on electrification of transportation, electrification of buildings, energy efficiency, energy conservation, more renewable energy, and investment in new technologies, clean energy technologies. And at the same time, you have the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has undertaken the steps called a MOPR, which is a minimum offer price rule, which is going to transform how states like New Jersey do their business in terms of auctions and in terms of their capacity market, how it's going to have a tremendous and large impact, let me put it that way. And we need to figure that out. One of the things I look at it is that according to the current energy master plan, the electricity demand by 2050 will be double of that today. So that provides many opportunities. At the same time, the grid of the future is transforming in that instead of having there's going to be distributed generation. There's going to be emphasis on new technologies like not so new, but thermostats and internet devices, IoTs, and all those things, different apps that are going to be playing in the energy management field. And I'm also looking forward to a carbon tax, which is going to be happening. And there are going to be some changes in terms of the net metering changes that are going to be there. And we're also looking at the rate design and rate making process. And so there's going to be the consumers have become producers. So they're no longer consumers, they become prosumers. They produce as well as consume. And so then when you talk about the gas marketplace, pipelines, whether you need the pipelines, what is the pipeline safety, reliability, all those things are going to change. In the caught in between all these changes are the low and moderate income customers. Affordability will become a major issue. And how do you include the low and moderate income customers into this clean energy journey? So we can go on and on. I think there is going to be opportunity for retail market suppliers and see how they can play in that. And also we have the regulation, government energy aggregation, that is also going to be playing a major role for the third-party suppliers.
Thanks, Upendra. Those of you who do not know Upendra, I think he forgot to tell you that he is a commissioner who serves on New Jersey's Bureau of Public Utilities. Thanks. Hey, Jerem, you want to go next?
And I want to thank you and Christina and Z Prime for hosting this conversation. Again, my name is Jim Steffes. I lead the policy team and work in pro-consumer market development across North America and lead external affairs at Direct Energy today. A bit about me, 25 years, a little over 25 years in the energy space. with some leading and innovative energy firms. And I look at the list of people on this call, and I know that I've worked with a lot of you through the years. So it's good to be with everybody today, even though it's virtually. I think just about kind of where I see the world going. I think if you, and I'll put a sort of a self-serving plug, if you look at my Twitter account, and if you decide to in fact become a follower, that's great. You know, on my Twitter account, I talk about making the world a better place with smarter, cleaner, and more affordable energy for all. And I think that's really what we're doing. And a part of that smarter, cleaner, and more affordable energy, and the commissioner mentioned affordability is a key issue in this transition. But energy choice is also a key part of that. And as I step back from where we are with COVID-19 and where we are with this global pandemic and the global lockdown, I think, you know, I think we're all sort of asking ourselves, what is the broader goal? Where is the bigger opportunity? And these trends around clean and smart and affordable have to be accelerated, and I think will be accelerated. And so that gives me great optimism about the market and all of our futures as we go forward with our changed lives. Again, thanks, and looking forward to the questions, and looking forward to this dialogue. And even though it's not physical, again, a virtual dialogue is just as good today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Yes, I certainly, by the way, you know, Jim, I think I've known Jim, I've worked with Jim since what, 2005, probably, with your previous incarnation at Direct Energy?
Previous, yeah.
And I've known Bill since the year 2000 for almost 20 years now. So, you know, you have some, and Kevin, I've worked with you since 2007 or 8. And so, you know, we have some people who have been in this business for quite a long time, and so the collective knowledge is exactly what we are trying to bring to bear in this whole thought process. So I'm going to stay with you, Jim.
Okay.
And so, you know, the consumer, you know, we talk about, when you're talking about the stakeholders, probably the one stakeholder who ought to be front and center is the consumer. So from the consumer's point of view, there are so many technology choices. In fact, you know, I have been using a line that you taught me, which is the 4 Ds, which I certainly want you to get back and explain to us. And they also have very different expectations from their vendors. You know, even from 5 years ago, let alone 20 years ago, when the retail market opening happened. I mean, they're no longer ratepayers, they're actually consumers who actually have a soul and actually can do things to you. And so the whole question is, how should the retail marketers adapt given the expectations of the consumers, and how does that affect their business strategy and business models?
Sure. Well, again, thanks. And it was interesting. Commissioner mentioned the 1999 Act. Like, I remember being in Newark with Herb Tate then at the time, leading the Board of Public Utilities, working through that conversation about how do we restructure New Jersey's energy market, and now looking here where we're at and what are we going to do for the next 20 years. So a great question. You know, in our industry, the retail energy business is changing. It's primarily changing because we are moving from a world of ratepayers to a world of consumers or prosumers. Because the energy business itself is rapidly transforming, and I, you know, the 4 Ds I talk about, and it really, there's even more than 4, there's 8, but how we digitalize and decentralize, and again, how we increase the drive or the electrification of both the auto fleet and then everything else that we do and all the other movements we need, decarbonization, the declining price of renewables, both big and small renewables. While there may be load growth, it's interesting at some level, and you see this COVID, it's relatively dull market for the last few years in terms of load growth, and which of course is compounded by the COVID-19 lockdowns. So this transformation is a once in a lifetime transformation. I mean, you'd have to go back to the early 90s when we moved from fully regulated to hybrid competition, or back to the 30s when we set up the monopolies and built through the public and private sector these utilities. But I think, and the key element that's driving this market that I see is really focusing on these consumers, be it big industrial consumers or homeowners, because these consumers, what they want in the D that I would say that the most important D is they want to see their power and gas, really their energy needs designed for them and for their specific wants and needs. We no longer are just simply selling electrons down an piece of aluminum or selling a therm or a decatherm through a pipe. But we're looking, and we have to have an engaged conversation where we design the future, not the way we see it, but the way they see it. But this is a hard change. This is a big change. Our businesses, and we're all sitting here and we compete fiercely, working with people like Bill to try to get good market rules. But we build our businesses around efficiency, around scale, around sort of operational excellence. And again, when we build our businesses in a world where the regulatory community, what generally speaking, see that the most important metric is price. While affordability matters, price, especially price compared to what I would say is a poorly constructed proxy, this holy grail of the default service, is really a mistake. And so we have to change because our customers want us to change, because our regulatory partners want us to change. And we need to help bring all of this along, the technology firms, the key partners we have. So think about it this way, I guess, in a little bit, we're all going to probably be turning on our TV and watching SpaceX return America and 2 American astronauts to space, lifting off from the continental U.S. That is the kind of excitement that I would love to see about our industry that we're bringing forward. Are we creating that kind of moonshot? Are we thinking those big ideas? Are we helping consumers get to a carbon-free energy world before the regulators tell them they have to? Do consumers value our service? If their credit card expires on our service, are they going to call us to get re-upped like they do with Netflix, or are they going to let it go into the dustbin? So that's really where I see it going. Love to hear what everybody else thinks about this. It's a lot of hard work, but for me, and for what I've seen in the past 25 years, I think the next 25 can even be more exciting. And that's kind of what keeps me going every single day. Kumar, I guess hopefully that helped answer your question.
Oh, thank you. That certainly did. So I want to switch to a slightly different set of customers, which is called our famous commercial and industrial customers. Hey, Kevin. Most of your work recently has been with the renewable portfolios, and you've been working a lot with commercial and industrial customers. Can you, shed some light on how the commercial and industrial customers are going to fare, and what their expectations are, and how that's going to change in the upcoming days and months?
Yeah, sure, Kumar. Thanks again. So, it's everybody's aware of where we are with the pandemic and everything, and we've definitely seen some, reduced load in certain industries. Think about, schools and restaurants and things like that. But we've also seen increases in a lot of other industries, manufacturing facilities, data centers, hospitals, et cetera, other healthcare. So, it's balanced out somewhat, but this is a short-term view. I think, there'll be some restaurants that don't bounce back, others that'll start up. So it's going to be, I think, well positioned for the future for a good bounce back. What we're seeing with, currently on the renewable side of it all is a lot of demand. We haven't seen really any demand on the, because all of our customers that are really interested in it are very low, think about the industrial more than the commercial. A lot of those renewable initiatives are being driven by the RE100s of the world. So that demand is, is still where it is today. And I think when you look back at the whole industry, right, you're seeing the same thing. You're seeing a reduction of about, we were projected, I think, in this year to do 20 gigawatts of additional renewables, a 47% increase from last year. So you're seeing definitely not a reduction in that, but a delay. So you have 10 or 11 gigawatts of that committed. That's going to move forward. People are thinking about how do we do that, right? How do we get these workers out there in a safe environment to build these facilities? And they're starting to figure that out, right? I think we have seen that from not just in a renewable perspective, but going to the grocery store. So they're figuring those pieces out. The industry still sees, the renewable sector as a, AAA investment. Demand is still up. Everybody's trying to beat the ITC, downgrade. So that's a big driver of it all still. Hopefully, that gets, redone through maybe one of these stimulus packages. I don't know, but hopefully we reignite that and can keep all of this renewable stuff moving. But it's not slowing down, right? I think, from a commercial customer perspective, it's the clean energy goals are, if anything, increasing. You have storage coming into the picture that has an incredible amount of benefits, not just from a resiliency, just a resiliency perspective, right? I mean, that's huge for commercial customers, but you have all these revenue generating programs that are starting to come up. I think even ERCOT, who's, the grid operator in Texas, who's working remotely, they have no projections to go back anytime soon, but a lot of their discussions and ongoing collaborations are around energy storage and how do we make that work. And customers are really interested in that. So I think, you have a lot of, I think overall the industry's positive. I think from a commercial and industrial standpoint, what customers are reaching out to suppliers to do. And it comes in, many shapes and forms. It could be, you have a lot of companies doing these, kind of think of the platforms, the auction platforms for retail pricing. You're starting to see those for PPAs, right? So, customers can come to a retail supplier for a direct transaction off of assets that they may own, or they can bring in their own PPA. And so you have a versatile supplier that can integrate those technologies through any type of rate structure. And I'll just, step back into Jim's world for a second and say, as MP2, that's kind of started with the platform. Was a large solar installer wanted to come into Texas, go regulatory construct. So we financially structured a product based on how the market sells. It's very popular. And so the cool thing about these technologies is those type of structures can apply across a residential and commercial and industrial spectrum. The way that you integrate and offset and settle and price and really deliver the product. It's interestingly enough very similar. So, we've seen just really a lot of positive impact still to the industry, even though these projects have been delayed. I think if you step down to the residential sector, people are definitely seeing cancellations of solar on that side, but another pivot, you're starting to see remote selling, right? So people are doing these virtual calls with customers. They're walking them through, and even on the commercial side, walking them through a sale, getting it done, and then, you can still schedule the installation without having to go into the customer's home. So it's, it's interesting. I think there's definitely some uncertainty, no doubt. I think it's all short term with everything we're seeing. The supply chain's impacted. I think with the tariffs, though, you have a lot of companies that have established things in the U.S. You have other countries that have increased their supply chains due to the restrictions with some of the Asian countries. So, even though you're seeing an impact, you still have other avenues that are increasing. Tesla is looking at building their next gigafactory in Austin, Texas. So that's a huge deal. I think, that's going to go a long way for the energy storage and electric vehicle and electrification on a whole, which we're all seeing a lot of, demand and interest in right now. So, I think that's the main points, Kumar. I think another big impact to all of it is the driver of fossil fuels, which is oil. We've all seen what has happened to oil prices lately, and I think that's another driver. I think a lot of these companies are stepping back and saying, really starting to evaluate where is that peak and how do renewables fit in, and should we be taking a different look? Should we be doing something else? So I think fundamentally you're going to have these changes coming from all sides of, more renewables, grid infrastructure improvements, energy storage technologies, new products to support them. It's really just overall a very positive outlook from our side.
Thanks, Kevin. That's quite interesting, especially in fact, if you remember, your own bosses at Shell declared a couple of years ago that in 10 or 15 years, 50%, they expect 50% of their revenues to come from renewable sources as opposed to fossil fuels, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I encourage everybody to go take a look at Shell's website. They have a whole section on sustainability and their governance around it, and they have an outlook. They have a couple of different scenarios, but the one I'm thinking about right now is the sky scenario, and they really walk you through their outlook through 2050 on what they think renewables are going to do and how they're committed to helping that world take shape. So yeah, encourage everybody to take a look at that, and that's absolutely accurate, Kumar.
Great, thank you. Laura, you spent a few years, you were never really involved in selling energy as a commodity, but you were involved in selling a lot of energy service products around electricity. And so from your point of view, how is that market going to play out in the future, whether it be commercial and industrial or whether it be even residential? And, the non-commodity products, how are they going to affect, how are they going to be affected, and how is that, what do you see coming down that line of processes?
Thanks, Kumar. I'm probably going to echo a lot of the sentiments that were just expressed by Jim and Kevin. And the mention of Tesla and Austin in the same sentence made me smile, Kevin. Did my heart a lot of good. I live right outside of Austin. My take on services and offerings in the retail market and what's important has consistently been focused on the end consumer. It's been the one consistent theme throughout my very career, advocating for my clients and my clients' customers. How can we present information in a way to the end consumer that first makes enough sense to drive action or adoption of automation or services to ensure the reliable supply of clean energy to everybody at affordable prices, no matter what, if you're in residential or senior. If you can answer yes to the question, is this model sustainable for all participants? And finding the balance in that. It's got to work for everybody. And finally, is the result of this effort measurable? Can it be calculated and proven to be providing the consumers the expected benefit? That's huge. I think this will continue to drive services offered by retailers. Supporting that effort are questions like, should I develop, partner, or acquire services or products needed? We've already seen initiatives changing the answers to these questions like digitalization of communication. It's grown an entire API ecosystem supporting retailers' efforts to get meaningful information to their customers at the point and place of that customer's need. Post-COVID world, I think this will be increasingly important. Expanding this effort to include more services and put the power in the hands of that end consumer. Disruptors have plagued this industry. in the marketplace, effectively communicating really creative offers that have sparked energy retailers to step up their pace. Not that traditional energy retailers were not at various stages of offering new products or coupling commodity with non-commodity. Rather, it was these disruptors that explained their model in a meaningful way that drove acceptance and ultimately change, and the consumer switched to them and their behaviors. Catching the attention, for example, of residential consumers are disruptors that offer no contracts, with no penalties for service termination. So it's come and go. Energy Ogre was one who could, their claim to fame was they procure the lowest price energy. Arcadia, similar to Energy Ogre, lowest price coupled with clean energy. And then you have, lo and behold, Gritty. They pass through wholesale pricing to the end consumer with a prepay plan. They send pricing alerts. They did send pricing alerts to change consumer behavior. The millennials really like the pay-as-you-go. An entire study can be done on this one, because after the failure last summer, whenever Texas hit market caps multiple times throughout the year, drove extremely high wholesale pricing. There was no other protection for these consumers other than for them to react. They've now started embracing automation and using smart home devices. So you have to have some technology, I think, to make these models work. And I think that's what everybody's gravitating to. More towards C&I, that side of the business, new models have made significant headway in like solar developers selling subscriptions to their development. The energy produced offsets the bill in the form of credits to the end user. Coupling storage with solar, backup generators, EVs, all to balance the energy supply in a way that benefits both the retailer and the consumer. So due to these disruptors and many more, I think energy retailers are looking to couple commodity with non-commodity products to compete. I think we'll see that continue to grow. The advantage that energy retailers have that is huge is the data lakes of information they have. They can use the historical market and meter information to bring into the forefront meaningful offers. They can couple with technology partners and rebuild patterns that create things that are relevant to the market.
Thanks, Laura. Going to Bill, the organization that you are now the head of, the main goal of your organization is to create a good environment ecosystem for the retail markets. In fact, I remember being in the very first meeting of National Energy Marketers. I believe that was what, 1998 or not? Sorry, 98. Yes, when Craig had organized National Energy Marketers. So, regulatory change has been one of the key aspects of your focus in the last 22 years. So what do you consider most important at this time to make sure that energy retailers have play their proper role? What needs to happen so that energy retailers can play a proper role as one of the significant stakeholders in the entire future?
I love that question. Utility commissions should refocus their energies on utility natural monopoly functions. That's what they're supposed to do. Utilities must exist as natural monopolies to ensure the integrity of delivery infrastructure within their franchise area. The absence of competition in the installation, maintenance, and operation of wires and pipes requires regulatory commission oversight to ensure safe and efficient system operation and utility financial health. However, all but a handful of utilities have retained legacy roles that are no longer natural monopoly functions. I consider them unnatural monopoly functions. These functions are better regulated by competitive forces in the free and open market. Competitive forces are far more effective in meeting consumer needs and desires than regulation. The energy supply, billing, and customer care functions are the most obvious example of utility business functions that are fully competitive in nature and should be removed from traditional regulatory control and oversight. The control and oversight provided by competitive forces and by routine governmentally enforced consumer protections would be sufficient, just as they are today in telecommunications, TV programming, internet services, and other items like that. But we've all heard the whining. Where utilities compete, their price to compare is lower than retail suppliers' competitive offers. I've heard it over and over again. This is an inane argument. When a consumer compares the so-called price to compare to a retail supplier's offer, it's most always an apples to oranges comparison. How can a comparison of a short-term utility price to compare to longer and sometimes much longer-term retail energy supply fixed price offers that include green attributes, sign-up bonuses, ongoing rewards programs, and so forth be considered valid? But I'll go beyond that. I went to the PA Power Switch website this past Saturday. I like to go there once in a while to see things. I entered a zip code. It's a Harrisburg zip code, 17025. Among the 164 offers listed, this is for electricity alone, I found 81 from 38 different retail energy suppliers that were fixed price, somewhere from 6 to 36 months. There was no monthly fee, no sign-up fee, and they were lower than the current utilities price to compare. And a quarter of these offers had additional renewable attributes. In fact, these 81 offers averaged 12.3% below the current utilities price to compare. And 55 of them had a term of 12 months or greater, and they averaged 12.5% below the price to compare. So I look at this all the time. I don't see where the utilities do a better job. But let's take this an important step further. Utility price to compare is subsidized. It includes virtually all of the utilities costs related to the provision of utility supply service. It excludes virtually all of the utilities costs related to the provision of supply service, except for the actual raw cost of electricity or natural gas purchased. Shouldn't supply service costs include at least some expenses relating to accounting, IT, billing, customer care, legal, regulatory, and more? Why don't they? These costs are billed to all ratepayers in the utility delivery charge. Results of this are: 1, the price to compare is artificially low, and 2, the retail supplier customers pay for services and their billed utility delivery service charge that are not provided to them. Is there any benefit at all to a utility by offering subsidized commodity supply services? Are there really benefits to consumers overall? I firmly believe the answer to both these questions is no. The unnatural utility monopoly is a dinosaur. It actually harms consumers with unnecessary costs and stifles competition. I love utilities, but I don't know what they're doing with competitive services. So I believe the energy supply function should be transferred to retail energy suppliers completely. Electricity supply is no longer in a category of a natural monopoly function. 100% of the electricity and natural gas supply needs of consumers located within a utility franchise area can be satisfied by the competitive energy marketplace. We all know that. There's no incremental benefit awarded to regulators at all, or by regulators, to utilities or their share owners related to the utility supplying electricity or natural gas. Since there's no benefits, why would the utility want to be burdened by this responsibility? The billing function should also be transferred. Retail energy suppliers have the ability and a strong motivation to provide the monthly billing for the energy they supply. Billing establishes an ownership relationship with the customer, which has significant value to the supplier and facilitates the ability to offer additional products and services through bill messages and advertising that most of us don't have today. Utilities have no need for ownership relationship with the ratepayers. A customer's location alone within the utility franchise area guarantees their delivery service revenue based on the rates set by regulators. A utility has nothing to lose by transferring the full customer billing relationship to the retail marketplace, so long as the delivery service charges are billed by the retail energy supplier and remitted to the utility in a timely manner. Likewise, the customer care function should be transferred to retail suppliers. Suppliers have the ability and a strong motivation to provide customer care through a call center, telephone, email, and chat services. Every retail supplier provides some level of customer care services at present, and they'd be highly motivated to provide a full level of customer care services for the same reason they would be motivated to assume the billing relationship. Competition provides the strongest motivation for retail suppliers to provide high-quality customer care. There are other ancillary issues, of course, and I won't go through them, but all of these have been handled extremely well. for over 20 years in the Texas Electricity and Georgia Natural Gas programs. Additionally, Texas Electricity and Georgia Natural Gas customers seem to enjoy incredibly low total energy prices compared to most, if not all, other states. And I challenge people to check this out. I have. And for those who may think that retail energy suppliers service is more consumer complaint prone, I have to leave you with a good example of the hyperbole thrown at the supply industry. In the New York PSC's order on December 12th, they noted this, I quote, "The record establishes that the complaint rate for ESCOs remains unacceptably high," end quote. In response to that statement, I immediately analyzed additional customer complaints reported to the Commission over the previous 12-month period and found that reported utility complaints per ratepayer were about 40% higher than ESCO complaints per customer served. So I can't imagine what standard New York used for unacceptably high. It's time for state regulators throughout the U.S. to recognize that retail energy suppliers can and should be the stakeholders of the future for all retail energy competitive functions. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Bill. Well, Upendra, I had originally I had written out a question for you. However, in the light of Bill's evangelical zeal in influencing policy, maybe I should just let you talk to what he was talking about.
No, I think he's barking the wrong tree. He has to go to the legislature. The key is that what happens is that legislatures are political animals, right? I mean, one customer complaint comes and they jump and they say that we need to modify this, modify that. You know, of course, we had a bad experience in the polar vortex, and number of it could be, it could be, when it happens to you, one complaint is too many. And so I think there are a lot of issues that need to be worked out. I think, in terms of Bill's point about billing, I think billing is an important for you to have the, to show that, because a lot of times people don't know who is behind the bill, and they think that utility is providing that. That I think something to be looked at. I think definitely, and also, establishing the relationship as a third-party supplier. If your name appears on the bill, you will have the relationship. And in terms of customer care, I don't know whether customer care, we only get complaints when I'm talking about the board. Also, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for the entire board, just to be as a disclaimer. We don't see that many customer complaints. I think one of the problems we had is that we were in New Jersey. We were way behind in trying to catch up because we don't have e-filing. I think that's one of the major things that needs to happen. So that way, and there's also legislative requirement that we don't need to, you don't have to file every year like for license renewal. The process is very straightforward. I think that was a major improvement to the system. And in terms of the customers' care, going back to that, I don't know whether we get a lot of calls about the customer care, that the issues. I think that it's a question of educating the consumer. They don't know who to call, or if they don't know who to call, they call the board, and the board has to or they call the consumer affairs, the DCA. And so I think that is a lot of customer education that is required. I think there are a lot of opportunities for third-party suppliers, and I would be the first one to say that the field is not a level playing field, and there is a natural disadvantage. I think utilities tend to think that they need more, they deserve more. I think that's how they approach the whole thing, and so this has to be. The ship has to be steered in the right direction, and in order to have true competition, the way it should work is that there is a lot of things that need to be worked out. Also, we have the rate council. Rate council is, the laws are made to protect those vulnerable population, the senior citizens, low income population, minorities. And so what happens is that the rate council is very tough on even one bad incident. So I think, there are some bad players in the industry like any other industry, and they make it difficult for rest of the suppliers.
Great. Thank you very much. And so, we are nearing the end of our seminar. So I wanted to do what I would typically describe as a speed round. Imagine, if you will, you went to bed tonight and woke up sometime in future, and all of this stuff is over. The world is back to whatever will be considered as normal. Something like Rip Van Winkle, or for those of you who remember, Bobby coming out of the shower in Dallas in the 70s, or the wonderful movie called Idiocracy by Michael Judge. Whatever it is, so you're awake, and I have two questions. Short answers, please. What is the one thing that you would like to see has changed? And secondly, what is the one thing you're sure has changed, whether you like it or not? Upendra, you want to go first?
Okay. The first question is what has changed, right? Yeah.
What you would like to see has changed.
Right.
And second question is what are you sure has changed?
I think I like to see that they need to have some kind of a carbon tax. I think right now we are, I think the third party suppliers are hurting with respect to the RPS credits. I think there's something I could not fix in the legislature. And if you have a carbon tax, then you can deal with solar, wind, anything, any renewable on the level playing field. I think that's, I would like to see that. It will take some time, I think. So that's one part of the question. What is the second part?
Second part is, what do you think is, what do you think will definitely be changed?
Well, I think, we'll definitely have e-filing. That's what I know. It's about time. There's tremendous pressure to have e-filing. And I think, definitely in terms of the renewable and energy and climate change issues, I think there's more and more programs for transportation is going to change dramatically in terms of don't ask me the time frame, but I think we're all moving towards electric vehicles and having the deployment of charging station around. I think that's going to be a major change.
Thank you. Hey, Bill, I think you just spent quite a bit of time, quite a bit of your time telling us what exactly you would like to see changed.
That's it. I have nothing else to say.
But what would you? Okay, so let me just ask you the second part of the question.
Yeah,
You're sure it would change?
I was always a big proponent in every company I managed of work at home for employees. This way I could employ people, not just from my local area, but the best, throughout the region or the nation. And I think this coronavirus experience has really put a much better on people working at home. And I think that something like this, not just in our industry, but especially for our industry, will really allow us to improve the quality of the people we have as we work real hard to serve customers better. That's what it's all about. That's what I think is inevitable.
Great. Laura, same two questions. What would you like to have changed? And what do you think would have changed?
Well, I think what I would like to have changed would be how we talk about the services and offerings in the energy market, a little bit more transparency around it, very clear, distinct communications. What I know will be changed is how we understand the market. I mean, look at us now, disruptors, innovations, they all keep it interesting. Who knows what tomorrow may bring? We just need to understand each other's strengths of each market participant and what they can bring to the table and work together for the best solutions.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, so my two, I actually have two for what I want to change. The biggest is probably grid structure. It's so hard to get done with our current infrastructure, and so that's important. But also data, access to data, super critical to integrate these emerging technologies. So that's a big. What I know will be changed is more technology integration with the grid due to customer demand. That's absolute.
Thanks, Kevin. Hey, Jim, I'm going to let you have the last word on this subject.
Oh boy, you're going to give me the last word. Okay, well,
Absolutely.
look, so first of all, what am I sure has changed? I like to tell people don't be a focus group of one. So whatever I'm sure I'm wrong about. But what I would say, and this is, I guess, again, personal kind of lens back on the last 3 to 4 months. I think our market's going to a little bit. I agree with the concept of technology and data and moving forward. But I also think there's an element that consumers for some time are going to want safety, they're going to want simplicity, and they're going to want service. And I think that's, at least, again, focus group of one is where I think things are going to go. What would I like to see? I think, and e-filing would be good, I think, across the country. But bigger than e-filing, or maybe to build on the e-filing concept, I think what we've learned is that virtually we can have conversations. And I would love to see conversations about market design, market reform, pro-consumer movements happen virtually and faster than they've been happening in the last few years. I think our policymakers, our regulators, our legislative leadership, industry participants, consumers, there's no reason we can't continue to accelerate having a conversation about how do we get to a better future for all. And I hope that we're able to do that we really do re-accelerate those conversations across the U.S. and not use this as a chance to go slow. So that's what I'd like to see.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you. And I certainly, agree with the point of what is it that we know and we don't know might or might not happen. In fact, I think there are two wonderful, noble minds who have come up with their one-liners on this. One, of course, is our friend Yogi Berra, who said, you got to be real careful about making predictions, especially about the future. And I think the other one was, I just remembered that line from Mark Twain when he talked about the focus group of one. He said, it ain't what you don't know that kills you. It is what you're absolutely sure of, which just ain't so. And I wish a lot of people would, who are so dogmatically sure about what they're doing would just remember that. And crises like these remind us that whatever our forecasts are, Mother Nature has a way of pulling the rug from underneath. To close up, Christina, do we have time for a question or two? And you want to take over?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for all the great conversations and the perspectives that we got. I mean, it's been, really informative. We've gotten a lot of good comments back from our attendees. We do have a couple of questions here. One came in early when Upendra, you were introducing yourself, so I'm assuming this would be for you. It's from Tom McNulty. He says, ESG is not a new concept, but the SEC's interest in it's very new and recent. How do you think this will impact companies in the energy complex? We didn't hear the first part of that.
What is ESG, right? You said what is...
Yeah, so the question is, ESG is not a new concept, but the SEC's interest in it is very new and recent. How do you think this will impact companies in the energy complex?
I want to say that I don't know anything about it. So I'm not, because all these acronyms, I'm not sure. Yeah. So if somebody else on the panel may have a better idea. So I plead ignorance. Yeah. Not the fifth. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if Christine, I'll jump in. I mean, I think ESG investing or ESG kind of protocols Big companies will have to follow environmental, social governance kind of policies is the way I would categorize it, right?
Okay.
So, my lens is I think it will have a driver, but it will mainly have a driver for customers that are going, for businesses that are going slowly. I think if you're only trying to meet the bare minimum of ESG, an ESG requirement, I think consumers are going to leave you behind. And that's what's going to be the bigger driver. It's going to be painful for those that are not doing it well, but I think customers are going to take those that see it as an opportunity.
Okay, thank you. So the only other question we have is, somebody would like to, get in contact with the panelists for further conversations. You all can be found on LinkedIn through our postings. I've tagged each of you. But, if you're okay with it, we can give out your contact information, your email addresses after the event. But the easiest way would be to connect with you each individually through LinkedIn.
Great.
Okay.
If somebody gets to me, I promise I'll get right back to you.
Yeah. So that's all the questions we have. This has been great. Listening to the different viewpoints for the retail voice, retail energy voice. As I said, we will be having the utility voice roundtable coming on June 10th. We'll have utility, but then we'll also have, the flip side of it, the consumer advocate and the deregulated voice on that panel. And then we'll have the consumer advocate panel June 25th. So we hope everybody will tune in for these and continue to help us build up the conversations and the energy moving forward and bringing everybody together. So thank you.
Yeah.
So Kumar, anything last words?
Great to be here.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Good together. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day.